Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Hey everybody, how you doing today? We're here today to talk a little bit about Stephen and his appeal in a current situation there. And then on a separate topic, basically talking about Brennan and SCOTUS and why I think it would be important for the justices to address juvenile confessions on habeas. I think that that's just one of many places where they're going to have to address it, if they see the merits of it, of course, which I think there's a good chance. I mean, you can't look at what happened to Brennan and think, yeah, I like that. I like the thought of the fact that kids like him could walk into police interrogation rooms all over the country and end up, with life sentences. It's kind of disturbing. So hopefully they will see the merits in it. But anyways, today I'm wearing my rally t-shirt. I finally got my rally t-shirt, so just so you want to see here on the back, So breaking the chains, pretty cool shirt. I like it. And I'll obviously be wearing this in Manitowoc along with my Ask Me About the Control Question t-shirt. Not at the same time, obviously. Anyways, so just thought everybody should see, thought I want to show it off a little bit. It's a pretty cool shirt. That's why I got it. So, anyways, to what we're going to talk about today is, number one, a little bit about Stephen's case, what's going on with him on appeal. And if you guys have been paying attention, you know that recently, after filing the appeal, Kathleen Zellner filed a motion to supplement the record. And basically what she wants is to add this CD that was just recently handed over to her by the state, essentially. This is the CD that was held in Tom Fassbender's personal custody all this time. It's why I've been, anybody who knows me, it's why I refer to him now sometimes as Fassbender's Evidence Storage Solutions, because he clearly, to keep the CD with the content of the DASI computer out of the evidence rooms where the defense lawyers couldn't find it, took it into his own personal custody and has had it somewhere for the last 12 years in his own special place somewhere. So this is why she wants to add it, because it's got a bunch of information on there that proves her Brady claim that the prosecution withheld this CD from the defense, and therefore that is a valid Brady violation. And that's where that's at. So what's happened recently is the state filed its response brief, or its basically its response to Kathleen Zellner's brief to amend the record, or motion to amend the record, or supplement the record. That's why she's supplementing the record with CD. So she's basically just adding to it, right? So anyways, what we got is the state responded, and it was a real short one, guys, and I can leave the link for it down below if you like, but it's a real short one, and essentially just repeats the same thing over and over and over again. And that thing is, this CD was never seen at trial, therefore it can't be considered on appeal. On appeal, you can only consider what was at trial. And that's what this says over and over and over, just going around and around and around like a merry-go-round. And it just keeps repeating it for about, I think it's like 7 or 8 pages, and just keeps with some slight variations in theme, keeps repeating the same thing over and over. So yeah, they basically think that the CD should not be allowed to be supplemented into the record because it was never heard at trial. Well, that's all well and good, Wisconsin, but let's just take in a little bit more of the picture here. Would it have been at trial if you hadn't have hidden it? Right? It would have been at trial if Tom Fassbender wasn't sitting on it in his own personal custody. Okay? It would have been in an evidence room, and Jerry Buting would have found it and he would have seen it, and they would have used it. And you guys knew that. You knew that, and that's why you held it in Fassbender's personal custody, instead of putting it into an evidence room somewhere where it would have created a paper trail that Dean and Jerry could have followed and found. That's my honest opinion of what happened here, folks. They were desperately trying to hide this CD. And that's fine, you know, but here's the thing. Is it going to be allowed in on the appeal? I don't know. I you know, state may be right, but the fact of the matter is that when you think about it, that CD would have been at trial had it not been withheld. So could be interesting, I think. Anyway, so that's what's going on there with Stephen, and that's where it's at right now. And there's no decision on whether or not that CD can come in yet. Now, to move on to some of my thoughts about Brendan. I've been reading some of these, some of the articles that like Stephen Drizzen and Tracy Keogh have been, you know, retweeting and stuff, and you know, they're basically articles by lawyers that, you know, are now, you know, variously, you know, employed in various places, but hold high-ranking positions, and are well respected, that have written these articles that basically say why Brendan Dassey's case is such a travesty, why it's such a ridiculous farce, and pointing out that, you know, police methods need to be changed and need to, you know, take into account the high suggestibility of all youth. And some people say not all youth are that suggestible. No, the research and the numbers tell us that even all the way up to even like 20 years old, there's an inordinate number of false confessions. It's somewhere around the 20-year-old point. Within a couple years of turning 20 is when most people then suddenly lose that suggestibility and become more certain about things. And I'm not saying that there's never a person that's under 20 that got, you know, real focused and certain about things in life. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that for the most part, in a general sense, across an entire population, that there's a significant number of people that are still suggestible into their early 20s. Not saying that we need to make interrogations go up to that far. No, you know what? This, you know, you need to, when you're 18, you need to start owning your stuff, and you need to start, you know, realizing that the world can be a pretty formidable place. The whole thing I'm thinking here is the state in its brief said basically that, you know, there may be issues with the interrogation, and that things may need to change in terms of juvenile interrogations or whatever, but that's a matter for new law, and that this case is not a good vehicle for it. Well, the thing is that what most people are saying, a lot of these articles are saying, is that if the Supreme Court decides to act on this Brendan Dassey would not be the only decision. They would end up taking another 3 or 4 maybe cases with similarities to it to further punctuate and basically have more decisions by the Supreme Court that lawyers can look to. And here's the thing: people say, "Well, it's just habeas, though. It's just on habeas proceedings or whatever." But that needs to be addressed too. Just like what happened. Just like, you know, it's going to be you know, determined with new law. Whatever happens at trial court, right? Whatever happens in trial court is going to be affected by new law, right? Well, if they decide this case, they're going to be kind of, you know, helping to determine what happens when they have petitioners like Brendan Dassey who have not gotten a fair shake from the system. The special care was a joke. It was never you know, put out. It was never used. Special care was the farthest thing from anybody's mind because they basically used the full-on read technique on Brendan. Of course, especially with Brendan's level of suggestibility, of course the full read technique is gonna give them a confession, and it drives me crazy when I hear people say, "Yeah, but then he said, but he offered up those one things." Like, what things did he offer up? What are you talking about? Everything was suggested. Oh no, because he said they stabbed her and they dotted this and that, and you know, and they rattle off these things that can't be proven ever happened. And it's like, okay, but how do you know those things happened? I mean, you don't have anything to prove that those things happened. You don't have pools of blood anywhere. You don't have anything to suggest that. The prosecution tries to suggest something happened in the trailer, but nothing happened there. There's nothing there. There's literally nothing there that should be there. And so the trailer is a ridiculous farce. There's no pools of blood or anything to suggest a crime in the garage either, except for the mysterious bullet that doesn't have any concrete dust on it. So, you know, it seems to me that the Supreme Court would need to make multiple decisions, really, to make this go across kind of the entire justice system. You know, if they can address it with Brendan right now on habeas, which will help, you know, other, you know, wrongfully convicted teenagers or people who were teenagers when they were wrongfully convicted. It will help them be able to argue that they were coerced in their cases, hopefully, so that they can not have to spend the rest of their life in prison for a crime they didn't commit. I mean, that's where this is just one area, but then they also need to then kind of take a case that comes from trial court, directly from trial court, and make, you know, and make it very clear there that special care must be taken, and it has to be taken seriously, and they probably will say that they need to talk at least something about what they weighed and considered in finding the confession voluntary or involuntary. In my opinion, I think it should be either way. They should talk about what they were considering and how they saw it and whatever, and that they ultimately ruled this way. You know, I just think that there should be something, because right now, with no requirement at all to write anything at all, these courts are just basically pissing all over the Supreme Court, you know, requirement that special care be you know, exercised. They're just whizzing all over it. They don't care, because they don't have to prove they did it, so they just don't care. They just treat juveniles like they treat adults, and the research tells us that that's absolutely ridiculous. The Supreme Court, in multiple decisions, if you read the law professor's brief, in multiple decisions, the Supreme Court has said that juveniles at 16 and below are way more susceptible. And they said even up into the being, you know, sometimes 2021 and stuff, that there's even some suggestibility that lingers with a significant number of people until that point. These things have been stated, that you can't use the full read technique on juveniles, or, you know, if you do, you basically, like, if you do, you are rolling the dice. You are not going to be guaranteed. You're living in an illusion if you believe that this confession is going to be rock solid, because if you are using a full read technique on a juvenile, you are not really playing the percentages. You are basically getting a confession, and that's would be all that you care about. And that would be why this needs to be addressed, because as long as there's no requirement to say anything about it, this will continue to happen, in my opinion. So that's one thing the court needs to say. But beyond that, somebody was telling me recently about the Slenderman case is going to probably be coming around pretty soon, and headed up to the Supreme Court. And that would probably be another case, you know, where they could make a second decision in terms of juveniles and interrogations, and I would say that there'll probably be even another one or two after that, or maybe in a couple years' time, to kind of reiterate and remind the courts in a couple years with another decision that's, you know, very much almost mirrors Brendan and, you know, the Slenderman case possibly. So, and, you know, I'm speculating at what may happen here in the future, but, you know, it does seem that there's a good chance that case will end up before SCOTUS. So if they see the problem with Brendan's confession, and if they see a problem with the lack of special care administered, or at least the lack of evidence of it, hopefully they will do some things to really turn things around for juveniles in our criminal justice system, because right now they are kind of at the mercy of whatever investigator that is on them at the time. I'm sure that there's a great many, ethical investigators out there that don't mess around, when it comes to kids and stuff. It's been clearly shown multiple times, many times, that using the full read technique on a kid is just, you're not guaranteeing yourself anything. All you're doing is forcing somebody who's by the research is going to be suggestible more so than an adult. You are applying the full read technique to them. You are taking a chance. You are, and for them to have been saying it for as long as they have, to ignore it, I would say that you are taking a real big chance, because now look at the situation that Tom Fassbender and Mark Wiegert are in, because they didn't think special care mattered, and they completely coerced Brendan, fed him the whole damn story, and even that he couldn't remember. He had no idea what was going on. Anyway, so it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be interesting, but I would say that according to these articles, I think we're gonna see that if the Supreme Court sees the merit here, they're gonna end up taking probably a couple more cases that are vehicles to affect the trial courts, and that are vehicles for them to really spread this out and make it clear to all the courts. But by ruling on this, and a petition that comes from the trial courts, or a defendant who has used up his ability at the trial courts, that will then give them an opportunity to take a case like that to where they can make the law, that either make the law or just reiterate to the courts that special care matters, must be exercised, and if it isn't, then we can't back your confession, essentially. And they'll make a couple decisions like that, because look at how important it is. You see when you read these briefs and stuff, how they're citing case law. It's important to have case law to cite, and by doing multiple decisions, the Supreme Court will create multiple cases in case law that lawyers can point to, and that will ultimately help people who are trying to battle this kind of cancer that's going on, where we're bullying kids into confessing because we can't figure out what really happened. That's what's really going on. They honestly had to know what was going on with Brendan. There's just so many things they lie about. They spent the entire weekend with the kid, people. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then brought him in on Monday and got him to confess on Monday. That was an entire weekend. And you're telling me that these two investigators had not a clue that Brendan was highly suggestible and maybe, a little bit limited compared to other kids his age? That this entire weekend they didn't pick up on that? These are the worst. If that's true, these are the worst investigators ever, or among the worst investigators ever. If they didn't pick up on that in the 3 days prior to the Monday, March 1st, if those 3 days they didn't pick up on that, they are, among the worst investigators in history. Or they were coercing a kid and had an agenda. Take your pick. But to suggest that they didn't have any clue as to his limitations after an entire weekend is laughable, ridiculous, absolutely outrageous. Yeah, completely farcical, absolutely stupid. It's just like the way they talk about how come they didn't find the bones. Oh, because of Bear. Bear, a dog. A dog held up this investigation for, 3 days? Are you kidding me? Just a dog. there's ways to deal with a dog humanely. And, you know, we know that the bones didn't get found until the 8th. And the whole reason that they say that was is because of Bear, the dog. Because Bear was chained up there. Well, you know, from what I hear, you know, they were finding bones outside of the fire pit and stuff like that. It sounds like some of this evidence could have been found in the area outside of Bear's chain. The reach of Bear's chain. So that's the other thing about this. That's why the whole story of Bear, the big bad vicious bear, that prevented them from finding the bones until the 8th. Yeah, that's just another thing about the case. So, like I say, when the things begin to add up, it starts to get pretty ridiculous. So that's about it. That's some of my thoughts today. As far as, you know, Brendan Dassey goes, and what ultimately, if the Supreme Court decides to act favorably for Brendan and for juveniles in our criminal justice system, that it most likely doesn't end with Brendan. It's probably going to go on with a few other cases that they're going to, you know, hear and make decisions on to kind of punctuate the importance of their decisions, where they have said that juveniles require special care. Hopefully they will make the courts take them seriously, because at the moment it really doesn't seem like the courts are really taking it all that seriously, and that's just the honest truth of it. So anyways, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.